So we're coming on to the section now, quality of life after hemiglossectomy. I think the first thing to do before we go anywhere is explain what a glossectomy is. It's an operation to remove part of the tongue. And I think from here, that's all I really need to say. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Barbara, can we come to you first? I think you've got a bit of a slideshow. If you want to just introduce yourself and talk us through.
Yes, hello. Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I will go straight into my slideshow as I had a partial glossectomy, which is sort of the lowest tier, shall I say, or the least removed before we move on to Steph and Laura. So I'm just going to share my screen and let's hope that all works. There we go. Fabulous. So after effects of a partial glossectomy, I'll take you back to 2018. That's where my story starts. And basically in 2018, I was having the perfect year. I was getting some money in for Médecins Sans Frontières by swimming. I was investing in my health and losing weight. My beloved Norwich City was actually scoring goals and winning games, which you would never believe. And after many, many years, my partner finally asked me to marry him. So I was on cloud nine, shall we say. Going into the autumn, and I've got this very, very appealing slide here. This is actually a photo I only found yesterday because my phone automatically backs up, and it shows you that in October was the first time that I noticed something wasn't quite right. And I just put it down to, you know, wedding flutter stress, about to organize a big wedding, sort of a stress ulcer. But the one thing that really bothered me was when I was eating my Lindor, my very, very important chocolate ration every day, it was really burning and it was really bothering me. So I first started off with the pharmacist, which then sent me on to the dentist. And finally, after some convincing, the dentist then sent me on to a specialist at the Norfolk and Norwich Hospital to have a biopsy done. And I remember that day clear as day because, as Paul said earlier, they tell you that it doesn't hurt, and that's a load of bullshit because it really, really, really does hurt. Excuse my language there. And what I also very vividly remember is the consultant who was taking the biopsy, really cool as day, just saying, yeah, that's not cancer. It's not cancer. It's your teeth robbing. Don't worry about it. This was also in the run up to Christmas. So basically I went home, got over the pain of the biopsy and went on and had a brilliant Christmas. And on the 31st of December 2018, so New Year's Eve, I had my follow-up expecting to hear the words, oh, you're just a massive hypochondriac and get over yourself. But instead, I was told the bad news that I had squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue, which meant tongue cancer, which to that point I had never heard of, didn't know it was a thing, and was pretty scary and upsetting. But in a weird out-of-body reaction, I went, okay, I've got a show in Germany next week. Can I go? To which I got the answer, I think you should cancel your work commitments and concentrate on this. But speaking of work commitments, I'm self-employed. I used to be an event manager. I'm now an event concept designer. And I told a few people about my diagnosis, and someone in the office sort of came up to me and said, oh, I guess that's the end of your business then. Which really shocked me. And I was like, no, you know, there's life after cancer, which is why I took the decision to go public with my diagnosis and to carefully curate the content, shall we say, of what I was putting out there. So I had taken care of business. Everyone knew what was happening. I was surprised by the amount of tests and follow-ups that I needed. And then we came to the day where we talked about the operation, the glossectomy. So for anyone, I just got this slide in here, which gives you a bit of an idea of what a partial glossectomy is, but basically in non-medical speech, it's just removing a part of the tongue, and partial means that it's basically below half. So mine, if I just get my cursor over here, is a bit more lengthways and it goes a bit further back here. But when I sat down to have this chat about this operation, they were saying, right, so we are going to take a part of your arm to remove part of your tongue and then fill that with part of your arm. And then we'll take part of your leg and then patch up your arm, which was a lot of information to take in and was quite baffling, to say the least. And on top of that, I was really grateful to my plastic surgeon, who had a very honest conversation with me and said, you do realize what the risk factors are in terms of your speech and being able to eat and swallow, which I hadn't had clarity on until quite shortly before the operation. So we come to surgery day, beautiful before and after. I have to say, I'm still surprised now that my sort of outlook was quite, I don't want to call it positive, but it was sort of like, all right, yeah, let's get on with it. And also content. I had found myself in this really weird headspace where I was actually feeling almost relieved and sort of content with my life and going, okay, whatever happens, happens. And then I danced my way to the operating theatre to Sledgehammer by Peter Gabriel, and had the 12-hour operation. And just to sort of give you a bit of real life footage, this is my arm where they've taken the graft, or the flap as it's called, to then fix the tongue. And so I woke up after the operation, and one of the things that really sort of stays with me now is that I woke up and I was really happy. Now, I'm not sure how much of that is the drugs, probably a lot, but I was just really, really happy because I sort of remember waking up being groggy, and there were two nurses there, and they were chatting, and I tried to get their attention and then realized I can talk. And actually talk quite well, which was a surprise to everyone. And then proceeded to not stop talking for about 48 hours. And it was just a conveyor belt of words and stories. And I think I was just so overwhelmed by the fact that I could talk that I was scared to stop talking, which, to be fair, all my mates will tell you hasn't changed. So I do love to talk. And the other thing I remember is that I just felt a lot of love during that time. And it's tough to say that actually shouldn't take someone to be diagnosed with cancer in order to realize how loved they are. But for me, that was very true. I hadn't realized how actually what a great person I am and how much I have achieved. And actually having that that moment was a silver lining in the whole story. So I've purposefully not included lots of gory images because nobody really wants to see that. But one thing that really shocked me was the way my arm looked. It was sort of an open wound, and I'm not very good with bloody stuff and gory stuff anyhow. And also just to how vulnerable I was and felt. My partner was with me basically 24/7 at the hospital. The hospital was very busy. I had my own room, but I really felt like I needed him there to assist, to help me, with very basic bodily functions. And that I cannot even imagine what it must have been like for anyone who had to go through this during COVID without having that support. So, so I finally got let home. Took a bit longer than expected because I kept fainting. And we were just really happy to be home. As you can see, we immediately took a selfie, unknowingly that the next 48 hours were going to be absolute hell. So I had some side effects from the operation, which covered me in an itchy rash over my entire body. And also the other thing that nobody mentioned to me is that what happens to your bodily functions. So on a Saturday night at 4 a.m, I was trying to give birth to a watermelon, and had to be rushed to A&E because that all had gone horribly wrong. And I have to admit, out of all the things that had happened to me by that point, I think that was the lowest I had found myself, especially being in the same room with a load of drunk people, nursing their wounds from a big night out. And so I'm going to continue on. One of the things that I was really lucky with is, like I said, my speech, as we didn't know how it would impact me. But secondly, how I could eat. So I started off with a nasal tube, then continued on to soft and pureed food, but very quickly found my feet with eating. And there was definitely never any concern of me not having enough weight on me. So that is one issue or one challenge I didn't have to overcome like many of my colleagues. But what I didn't expect is how long it would take for body parts to heal, for my hand to heal, and then also in the long-term effect in terms of how I am still haven't regained full mobility in my hand, that I have a lot of pain in my forearm and in my thumb, also across my face, and I still can't feel parts of my face. I also didn't expect the fatigue, because fatigue's always associated with having chemo or radiotherapy. I know I had a very big ass operation, but I did not expect to be that flattened by it. We also had other implications, such as we had saved to buy a house. And if you have that kind of money in your bank account, you don't get benefits. So the week before my surgery, I bought a house. So we had some pretty big life things going on at the same time. But I was really happy that actually just a month after my operation, on the 7th of March, I was back in front of my events audience, giving my first speech, which was all pretty amazing. So moving on. So although I'm not left with many physical impacts of the glossectomy, I think what didn't become clear to me until at least 6 to 8 months later is the emotional impact. So about 6 months later, I actually was doing pretty good. You can see me here crowd surfing, raising some money for Shine Cancer Support, and meeting other cancer survivors with different cancers and just getting on with life. But then in about January, so a year after being diagnosed, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And that's when I first presented with PTSD-like symptoms, which is still a struggle that I am dealing with until now. We are now coming up to 3 years since diagnosis. So so that's for me, it's been very much an emotional journey. The wounds may have healed, and I have small compensations that I have to make, but it's the psychological effect which has been taking its toll. And one of the big things is that when I'm in my waiting room and I look around, there's nobody who looks like me. They're considered people in my waiting room are considerably older, so in their 70s and 80s, and it's we don't have as much as in common. And like Paul said earlier, nobody really talks in a waiting room anyhow. And when I went to look for support elsewhere, with other cancer survivors, I remember being met by a woman who said, "Oh, you're in your 30s, you've got this. Oh, when I was in my 30s, I had this cancer, and then I had this cancer, and then after that I had this cancer." And I was like, oh my God, is this my future? What on earth is going on? And it was all just more scary than actually helpful. One of the charities that did really help me were Shine Cancer Support, which were in the previous slide. And that was all great and good, but we had some more things in common. But one thing we didn't have in common is that our cancer journeys were very different. I didn't lose my hair, and I don't have fertility issues, but I had body parts moved into different parts of my, in my mouth, that part of my tongue removed, and that's where we didn't have that sort of commonality. So in one of the projects that has come out of the pandemic is the Young Tongues, which I founded in January this year. And basically through Instagram brought together a load of young people with tongue cancer. And we have some really great open and honest conversations of what it's like to deal with the side effects that we have and being able to support each other. And I'll be talking more about that tomorrow in my main speech. But I'm just seeing I've got 20 seconds left. So I can tell you it all had a happy ending, because after being engaged for absolutely forever, we finally were able to tie the knot, and I was able to smile and laugh and eat. And I think that's what early detection does for you. So Ben, I'll hand over back to you.
Wow, that's quite a story and quite a journey as well. I think there are going to be a whole host of questions that we want to ask, but we're quite tight on time. So what I'm going to do is continue introducing people, and then we'll come back to a Q&A shortly. So Steph, if I can ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, you may. Let me see if I can get my screen up here. So I am one of the US members of the Young Tongues. I was very lucky to meet Barbara and Laura through that. And here I am now. Can you guys see my screen? Are we good? All right.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so this is my story. Like Barbara said, the partial glossectomy is, for lack of better words, part of your tongue removed. I had a hemiglossectomy, so I had roughly half of my tongue removed. And I just wanted to give you a look at my journey as a survivor so you could understand where I'm coming from. So Steph, BC, before cancer, I was in my 8th year working as a registered nurse in the intensive care unit. I was navigating life as a divorced woman with a 6-year-old son who was just about to start 1st grade. It was exciting. I had my own house, and everything was looking really well. I was looking at going back to school, and I started to notice this weird pain. It was actually under my chin. And then I noticed that it started to hurt, but only when I swallowed. So I looked in the mirror one day and I noticed I had a lump on my tongue, which you can see the lump here. That black mark is actually from the biopsy and the silver they used to stop the bleeding, but it was just a lump. There was no ulceration or anything, just a very, very painful lump. So I went to 2 dentists and a local ENT, and they all said the same thing, here's some antibiotics, here's some steroids, you're too young to have cancer. I was 37 years old. No tobacco use, no history of anything, no family history. So about a month of different antibiotics and different steroids. And finally, the local ENT agreed to do a CAT scan. And he called me the next day. I was at work. And he said, hey, I still don't think it's cancer, but you have a mass and it's too far back for me to do anything about. So I'm going to send you to the specialist down at University of Maryland. And don't freak out. He's a head and neck cancer specialist, but he's the best guy for the job. So I said, okay. So I called and I made an appointment. I got in the following weekend, or the following week after the weekend. And Dr. Kyle Hatton at the University of Maryland was my ENT surgeon. And before he even took the biopsy, he had looked at my scan and he had looked at my everything in my history and took a look at my mouth. He said, I'm going to be very honest with you. I am pretty sure you have cancer. But we'll do the biopsy and make sure. That day we set a plan for surgery. And he said, if it's not cancer, we'll high five, we'll come up with a new plan. But if it is, we already have all this set. So 2 days later, I was working as charge on my unit in the hospital, and I saw the phone number come up and I answered it. I went back in the break room and he told me what we both already knew, that, I'm sorry to say, but you have squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue. It's a lot more emotional than I thought it would be. So I remember sitting down and just kind of like staring, and I called my parents and they broke down. So I left work and I went to comfort them, which was weird. But I guess I was just kind of in that mode, like, okay, I have to get through this. And as an only child, you know, my parents were like just freaking out, thinking they were going to lose me. And then I had my young son too, so that just added a whole another layer. And you know, living on my own, and it was a lot. So August 7th, 2019 was the day I was diagnosed. On the 27th was the day that I had my operation. And like Barbara, they had to take the part of my forearm and use that as now my tongue. So it's my arm tongue. And then I actually had a 2-step operation where they took the flap from my arm, but they covered it with Integra, which is a bovine collagen, to help with the healing process, and it helps with the scarring afterwards. So I had 7 days in the hospital after my first operation, and then I went back for a second one 3 weeks later. But the first operation was about 16 hours. I had to be rushed back in emergently because one of my vessels in the neck had kinked. And when they take the flap from your arm, they also take the radial artery, the radial nerve, and they create a pedicle here. And that's how it gets blood supply to the flap. And that's how they had noticed it had lost flow. So thankfully they found that and were able to salvage everything, and it was fine. I spent overnight on the ventilator, woke up the next day with the tracheostomy, the feeding tube. And like I said, I stayed in there for about a week. So waking up in post-op, I could feel the ventilator pushing the air into my lungs. And as a nurse, I think it just made it so much worse because I knew everything that was happening. One of my biggest fears was how do I know how to breathe with a trach? Like, how am I going to breathe? But you just do. Like, it's really not different. Your body just knows what to do. They were able to get me off the ventilator that morning. I went to my room. I was there for a week. One of the things that really freaked me out, though, when I went up to my room, my collet was broken, right? So I have one arm in a wound vac that I can't use. I have, at the time, a radial line, arterial line in this arm, measuring my blood pressure, and I can't talk. And I had this big thing in my mouth to keep my teeth from inadvertently biting my new flap. And they're like, oh, we don't have a collate that's working right now. Here's a piece of paper, just wave it if you need something. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I just was sobbing, but then I didn't know how to sob because I couldn't breathe. It was a mess. But I got through it. I got my trach removed a couple days, I think about a day maybe before I left the hospital. And then went home with the feeding tube for a couple weeks. And then I had that second surgery, and then I started radiation. But before that, I just wanted to talk real briefly about my nutrition. I started out using mostly the tube because it was easy. I could just put my medicine, my food right in there. I didn't have to worry about trying to swallow. The first day I came home from the hospital, I remember driving past like the 7-Eleven, right? And I don't know if you guys have those over there, but a little convenience store. And I was like, how am I ever going to go on trips? Because I can't eat. I can't, like, what if I just have to snack? Like, what am I going to do? And I came home and I just lost it because people were out living their lives. And here I was, this whole new, like, I didn't even know who I was. But I slowly got through it. You see in this picture here, this was my first meal that I tried to eat. And it was very important that I kept eating because it kept my swallowing. intact. Those muscles, I had to keep using them or you lose them, just like any other muscle. So about 2 or 3 weeks after I came home, I was allowed to get rid of the feeding tube finally. Here I went out to the mall, actually, not even probably 2 weeks after surgery. And I wanted a smoothie. I couldn't use a straw, but I could eat it with a spoon. And I was just so happy to be out and about and feeling some normalcy. And then all of that came crashing down with radiation. So before radiation, I had 2 teeth removed, my wisdom teeth. I had some cavities filled because radiation can cause so many horrible side effects with osteoradionecrosis, and it's a lot of risk factors if you have to have any dental work done after radiation to the head and neck. So I did a bunch of pre-op or pre-procedure stuff for that. And then I was scheduled for 6 weeks of daily IMRT down at University of Maryland again. And that was about a 40-minute drive from me every day, back and forth. I had great friends. My family helped me out, took me back and forth. I handled the first week or 2 of radiation really well. And then I don't know if it's because I have an underlying neuromuscular disease or if it was just I'm unlucky, but I had a horrible reaction to the radiation. I started with very bad mucositis. I had to be pulsed twice with steroids, which is risky in itself because of the infection risk, but I had to because I wasn't eating. I lost 30 pounds in that 6-week span of radiation, plus maybe 2 or 3 weeks afterwards. I just kept losing. So that's about 13 kilograms. And I couldn't eat or drink. I was getting IV fluids all the time. I actually begged for a peg tube, a feeding tube in my belly, because I was giving up. I couldn't do it. I was in so much pain. I was on a fentanyl patch, daily narcotics. I don't remember much of November because I was constantly on pain medicine. Here I was with my fentanyl lollipop, which I didn't know existed. And this was toward the end of radiation, with the burns on the outside, which were minimal compared to what was inside my mouth. But I kept doing it. And I even had my sense of humor, and on Halloween dressed up as radioactive man from The Simpsons. And, that's how I got through it. And it was rough, but I made it. And November 19th, I rang the bell and I sobbed my eyes out and I hugged my whole team and I went home to heal. And like Ben had said, it took months to heal initially from radiation. And I still have a lot of lasting effects from that, including lymphedema of the head and neck. And this is what I used for that. This is a lymphedema machine. I believe right now, unfortunately, through Tactile Medical, it's only available in the US, but I'm hoping eventually they can broaden their market, or if I don't know if there's similar things in Europe, but it's amazing. It really, really helps reduce the swelling from lymphedema and helps my swallowing and everything. I still have some nerve issues from radiation in my neck and shoulder area. My arm gets numb and tingly. I've developed hypothyroidism from that. Before radiation, my tongue, I could speak a lot better. Now I can't roll my R's, so my Spanish is terrible now. And I still have some nasal regurgitation from the surgery and paralysis of the nerves that help with swallowing. And like Barbara, I have the PTSD and the anxiety, and every once in a while it'll just hit me. And survivor's guilt is awful. But my friends and family and my medical team and the devices I have and my son, who is now in 3rd grade, have helped so much. And the people I've met on social media, Instagram, Facebook, it's a phenomenal community. And I'm so happy to be part of what Barbara is building with Young Tongues. And I started my own support group on Facebook called just Young Adult Cancer Support Group. And we have over 500 members now. People just realizing that they're not alone in this. And this month I'll start volunteering for the Almond Foundation in Baltimore, and it's a young adult cancer foundation. And I also do work with the National Coalition of Cancer Survivorship here in the US for policy change in healthcare that will mainly affect cancer survivors and cancer patients. And yeah, so in February, I will officially be 2 years NED. That'll be the 2-year anniversary of my first NED scan. I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy, especially the radiation. And, you know, I can't help though, but be grateful for the support and love I've received and the personal growth that I've gone through as a result of everything. It really forced me to learn how to let go and just embrace the journey. And I just want to leave you with a quote that my aunt had sent me years ago about life when I was suffering with depression and all as a teenager. And it says, life is like a grindstone, but whether it grinds you down or polishes you up depends on what you're made of. So that's my story.
Wow. Steph, when you stop sharing, will you do me a favor and just show everyone your mug that you've got on your desk right now, please?
Oh, yeah. Ooh,
Oh,
see it?
move it in. Move it in. There we go.
I have the
You want to read it out for people? I think it's probably going to be best.
Anyway, super cool head and neck cancer survivor. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah, no, and I think that sums it up really. You know, there's been some emotional talks today, and I think for anyone that's a survivor, you've nailed it with your mug. So awesome. Final panelist today, we've got Laura, or Diz. I'm not sure why it says Laura on your screen, Diz, when really, you know, it should be Diz, shouldn't it? So over to you, Diz.
Thank you very much, Ben, and thank you, Steph and Barbara as well. The guys are awesome. So let me just share my screen. And the thing, can you see that okay?
Yeah, we got
that. Amazing. Cool. So hi, I'm Laura. I'm also known as Diz. And I'm going to share with you that my life is like after total vasectomy. But first of all, let me tell you how I got here. In 2018, I was 38 years old, and I didn't have a care in the world. I had a job as a recruitment specialist for a menswear brand, and I was married to a great guy who made me laugh and enriched my life. And I had a good social life. Towards the end of that year, I hurt the back of my tongue, just with an electric toothbrush. It healed, but then I thought I hurt it again. So I went to my hygienist appointment, and she said, it looks like a bit of a touch, there's nothing to worry about. So I didn't. And as the pain was sporadic, I kind of forgot about it for a while until the pain would return. And that pain felt like I burnt my tongue, but then it would disappear again. So again, not bothered at all. Then a few months later, in March 2019, I was out with my sister Iz, my best friend Mark, and his husband Tiff, and we were having a great time. But then I drank something that was a bit too cold, and it hit that sensitive sore patch. But by this time, the pain was staying a bit longer, and I didn't know what to do. So Iz asked me if she could have a look, and I was like, sure, let's have a look. The look of horror on her face prompted me to phone my GP that followed booming to get this thing finally checked out. Unfortunately, it took many phone calls over several weeks to finally get an appointment booked in. So in the middle of April, 5 weeks after, my sister had been horrified and got my appointment. The sore was now a lump, and I had told it Larry. My visitor was very kind. She didn't think it was anything to worry about and used the words, I had to run for cancer. However, she did fill in a referral checklist and asked me a lot of questions for the form. For every question she answered that I said, yep, oh, yep, her face went from happy and filled out to looking a bit uncertain to looking quite worried. So, moving over to test stands and the worst bollocks in the world, and associated with pencilmite, I was given the diagnosis of a stage 4 cancer. It was advanced, it was aggressive, squamous cell carcinoma, HPV negative. I was a social smoker, I really drank alcohol, but I was completely blindsided by this diagnosis. It had to go. Larry would be evicted on the 13th of August that year, after I had some immunotherapy first. I set up a Facebook page for Biz versus Larry and Tums, but I would share everything as I felt it quite cathartic to share everything to my friends and family. They were rallied round, they joined This Is Army, to lift me up and telling me that I couldn't tell it myself. They wore red lipstick to support me when I couldn't wear my own lipstick. They sent me presents and flowers and messages of love and support and an absolute ton of kindness. A friend of mine, Sai, directed me to the Oral Cancer Foundation support group. This is where I was able to read about what was to come. Having an idea of the potential side effects and how to increase calories for a liquid diet, plus additional exercises of what I could do to help my swallow remain with me, was very beneficial. I found that being able to do something towards my own recovery post-surgery helped me give myself a little bit of control of my own body, especially when I felt I was out of control with everything. So before surgery, I was invited to join clinical trial 10695, which is a Keytruda pembrolizumab trial. So I had 2 infusions before surgery, and then my lid was fitted. Surgery on the 13th was a total mastectomy, as Larry had grown to a 9.5 centimetre tumour. I have what I've been medically told is a sliver of tongue left. During the months of my rehabilitation, I pushed myself. I set myself goals and objectives to get me out of bed and moving around. In my hospital room, I would say the alphabet out loud. I would say the names of all the objects in my room. My desire to talk was so strong that it almost consumed my every thought. Every time I was able to say window that bit clearer, I would reward myself with a stroll around the walls and some television time. They may seem small, but for me they were massive moments. Everything that I was doing really helped. And 9 days later, on the 22nd of August, I was discharged with 7 bags of sorcership, a ton of syringes, and a ton of meditation. A few weeks later, I had radiotherapy where Bessie the Mouse helped me through, as well as 2 horrific infusions of cisplatin. I had never been to the bathroom so much in my life as I did during those infusions. I discovered that radiotherapy was a brilliant test within brilliant, but the team were amazing and made things as bearable as possible. I'll be forever grateful for their support and their kindness. I also had counselling. I'm still having counselling over 2 years on. So after I'd finished my radiotherapy, and my spirits was improving with the therapy suggestions like talking, lots of talking, must talk, it will help you, saying the alphabet out loud and doing some tongue twisters that I'd added into my own little nips of rehabilitation, I started to focus on eating proper food. And then thought of mental for okay. And I was really losing my weight only for meditation because that tasted vile. I started blending my enfield drinks with soup and ice to thicken them up to give my throat muscles a bit of a challenge. And then I started being creative by mixing different flavors to create new flavors, such as mixing enfield juice plus with enfield plus to give a great tasting custard style thick set, and the chocolate and orange one was my favourite. However, I did taste flavoury foods. Drinking chicken bottle, whilst nice, was losing it as its appeal. So I started looking for inspiration from recipe books to share for any recipes for people who had been through all of cancer and who require soft foods. I couldn't find anything, and it really got me down. I felt so frustrated. Now I'm a qualified baker and I have been a head chef, and I have to say I really love my food. Not just eating it, but how to create the most flavours from it. And so I started to develop my own recipes. The first soup that I made was a honey roasted parsnip soup, followed by a roast potato and garlic soup, and then pepperoni pizza soup. Then I moved on to trying more textured but soft foods. It was my friend Emma who said I should write a recipe book. And then when lockdown hit and I was made redundant, she reminded me about the book and said, "You've got plenty of time now, so puff on." And so I did. I started to write it in the confidence. So after my radiotherapy, I met a woman called Paddy. Paddy had been diagnosed with tongue cancer and had started radiotherapy. As I knew what was to come through my own experiences, I contacted Chris from the Swallows and asked him to send a box of helpful items to Paddy. This is a picture on the left of the box that I received, because Chris asked me if I wanted one, and I was like, actually, that's a really good idea. So I said this. This box was so helpful, and it opened my eyes to the various products that are available to help overcome a lot of mouth issues that I still have. Then a few months later, I got to meet Chris when we were both interviewed on ITV on a piece about the pandemic and head and neck cancers. This is where Chris very kindly offered to get my book designed and published. The link to buy my recipe book is in the confidence that I just did in will be provided at the end of my talk. Chris also invited me to become an advocate for the Swallows, which I very happily jumped at. Then part of the Swallows has helped me be a part of the head and neck community more than I could imagine. I've been involved in a variety of studies to fund universities and hospitals. I take busy by helping fellow tongue cancer patients, and I find this is beneficial for me to help others go through this frightening experience so that they feel that they have someone with them guiding them through. Life after rally has not been easy at all. Learning to eat in spirits was a huge challenge, and there were times when I seriously thought I would never be able to eat again, or be understandable when I talked. Lockdown, however, was great for me, as I was able to spend my time on rehabilitating. Eating takes a long time, but I no longer take an hour to eat sandwiches. I use the finger food method where I bite into, moving the food with my finger, slipping around my mouth to check for any hidden bits. I chew and repeat the finger slip until it's all done and smooth. Then I take a bowl of water and wash and throw it down. This can take up to 90 seconds per bite, depending on what I'm eating. However, I now have no restrictions on what I eat and have enjoyed eating a steak at a restaurant. I just have to plan ahead and ask for extra water and napkins, as I had a tendency to get food down me. I carry a bottle of water and hand sanitizer and a mouth cleaning tip with me so that I can be as prepared as I can be. I also see my nurse and dentist twice a year, and my hygienist twice a year, so that I'm in the dentist chair every 3 months, and both of them offered tremendous in their support for my cancer. Having the treatment for that and my sex life taking those sides of my husband, part of it to me was not feeling desirable and then confident and able to be as intimate with my husband as I was before Larry turned up. The other part was that Jess and my husband was worried about making me so uncomfortable or hurting me. So I had to initiate when I was ready. The taking things nice and slow, seeing what worked out and what didn't. There's often try together when things worked or didn't work. I find since Larry, since his addiction, I'm a lot more confident now. I feel like I would have to be, as my speech impediment can sometimes hinder me. At work, where I'm now a full-time HR director, I have to make sure people feel comfortable in asking me to repeat myself, such as if I'm interviewing someone or having a one-to-one. I always let them know that I have a speech impediment, and should I talk too fast, or if they don't understand me, then they are welcome to stop me and repeat myself. I'm still having counselling for my anxiety, PTSD, and depression. But it is a slow journey and one I'm very happy to take so that I can feel like taking control of my life again. So life after that, even though things are slower for me, I need to be mindful of 2 minutes, and Jessica has been behind me for me a few times. And I have to plan my meals, otherwise I get overwhelmed at meal times. I am doing well. Not only am I with the swallows, but I'm also with sometimes verbal, that are recipes and talks of fellow tongue cancer patients. My recipe book, Eating with Confidence, is a book full of recipes that take the patient on a journey from liquid meals to light bites, soft foods, main meals, and puddings. All of which the patient can share with their family and friends, and make inclusivity around meals happen again. This it's instead of only not more many total affecting the patients, but in some ways I'm happy about that. I'm still with my husband JT. We've been married for over 5 years and together for 10. Later we changed our surname in December 2020, as I wasn't able to sell our previous surname, which is under this picture here. I can't say that word. I'm not even to attempt it. So they changed it, so they're now called the Marstens. We also adopted Sir Bob the day before I took place in my radiotherapy. He was a Western cat who had been battling and bruised, and it's been lovely watching him grow from being a frightened cat to a confident, lovable gentleman. And also, I celebrate my 42nd birthday soon, and I think each year is more special than the last, and for that I'm forever grateful. I'm forever grateful to all the people who helped me go from having a horrific tumour in my mouth to then learn how to live my life as I want to live it. So I'm as close to I was before Larry, but I've had some modifications and improvements. And then finally, these are some links that might help you. So we've got the swallows, this is all has a link for. We've got them times verbal, this will take you to the website. And then the website will have links for the Instagram and Facebook pages, and LinkedIn, plus you can sign up to get some information in the inbox. If you want to buy my recipe book, it is then sent globally, so this is a link. It's a £9.99 donation, plus a postage and packaging of £2. That they have absolute plenty here for everyone. There's a bunch of donations. It's an email Sharon at the Swallows. There's a name and address, so that sent out to. Please follow me on Instagram, as I tend to have a lot more foods and recipes and things that I do. And then finally, it's the Oral Cancer Foundation, who they're the first support group I contacted. So thank you very much for listening to me talk. I hope you enjoyed my life and what I've been through and to where I am now. Just did the news that it was I had my last shift this last Monday, and I'm free from cancer, which is 2 years on, so I'm very happy about that. Cool. Over to you, Ben.
Cheers. Great presentation. Obviously, somebody that's very positive and a great journey. I still haven't had a chance to read the book yet, the diet book, but I'm looking forward to getting my hands on that. Steph, I just wanted to pick up something that you raised because it was the first time I've heard it during the conference, survivor guilt. Now, everyone on this that's given a presentation that's been through this journey, there are some amazingly positive stories, but survivor guilt is not something that we hear talked about often, but I know it's a common theme, and you were the one that brought it up. How did it impact you?
Ooh. So for me, I think the first time I felt it, so it's really interesting because all of my cancer family, my cancer friends, are people I know online. Like, I don't have anybody in real life. And I think that's awesome that we have this digital age. We can do that, right? And one of the first people I started following when I was diagnosed actually had colon cancer. She was stage 4, and she wound up passing away right after I finished radiation and right before my first PET scan. And I remember, logging on to Instagram, and I had seen a post from her that she just didn't even look like herself. And she had gone into hospice, and she had told us, and we knew she had passed away. And I was like, this isn't fair. Like, it's not fair. Why am I here and she's not? Why did it work for me and not for her, even though they're completely different cancers? And it happened again. Another head and neck survivor who had reached out to me. Sorry.
That's fine. Do you want a moment?
No, it's fine. She was in her 20s, had young kids, and I had told her that, hey, you're going to get through this. But she didn't. I'm not sure what happened. I know she had a lot of complications. And her friend had found me on Instagram and reached out and said, hey, I know you would talk to Carrington. I wanted to let you know she passed away. She had talked about you a lot. And again, she left her kids, and I'm still here. And it's really difficult to, come to terms with feeling good about surviving, but at the same time losing people. And there's no way, there's no reason, there's no way to explain it. So I do a lot of meditation, and I talk a lot. I have a therapist, and I talk to my friends a lot, especially in the cancer community, because we all deal with this, right? But yeah, it's a very interesting phenomenon. I know a lot of people go through it. Anybody that's been through a traumatic experience can go through that. People returning from war. As an ICU nurse, I'm not unfamiliar with going through traumatic experiences with people and seeing people die and things like that. But when it's something so close to you, yeah.
It sucks, right?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, thank you. Barbara, one of the things that came up, obviously you're recently married, with a partner. Having had some of the tongue removed, I mean, one of the things that we were talking about is how has it impacted intimacy with your partner? A bit of a personal question, I know, but I know you're happy with this because obviously we've been talking beforehand. I wouldn't have asked it otherwise.
Yeah, well, it's had quite a bit of an impact, I must admit. Well, it's definitely early on after the operation, because quite honestly, the practicalities of intimacy aren't really there when you've got tubes coming out of you. And I think also, so one of the things I always say, I always know I've got the right guy, because he was there, you know, helping me wipe my bum before he even married me. So he's not going to be running anywhere else. But it does mean that we've had to, and I still have to, rebuild our intimacy. I think one of the things that really surprised me was when I recently spoke to a plastic surgeon who explained to me that actually a lot of nerves that run through and around your mouth, which, you know, gets you excited, are all in this area. And as I'm still quite numb and can't feel that, it's not a surprise that kissing feels completely different to what it did before. For example, I need to apply a lot more pressure in order to get the same sort of sensation from it. So yeah, so that's where I am. But I know that from across the community, having spoken to many of within the Young Tongues group, that it can be even more difficult, especially after radiotherapy, and especially when we're going to talk more about oral sex, or maybe even sex between, you know, if you're a lesbian, it makes it more difficult. So I do think it's a topic that doesn't get discussed enough, and I hope it is becomes a topic that we can talk more openly about.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. And Laura, Des, coming on to you, because your social life, based on some of the things you were posting, you look like full active social life before. How has it impacted you now?
It's impacted me quite a lot. So, prime example, I'm meant to be going out for dinner with work next week. The anxiety that brings of having to eat in front of a group of people who have never seen it eat before, and the fact that I am so they're from a mid-head 10, 15 minutes to eat their food, and then it goes for about an hour. And there's about 2 to 2.5 pints of water per, for men now. And the anxiety is done to that. So I'm having to do a lot of talking to my own mind thought to go, this is okay, within a safe space. The people that there's no real problems, know how they are now. It's just a new thing. So there, I should just go out. Now I can't just go out because there are things that will affect my mouth. Like, you know, I was massive on a bit of some cocktails. But now fruit cocktails I can't have because they dry my mouth out and make me feel like I've sucked a lemon for like a good couple of hours. Or other things that they over salivate, and that's when I sort of spray when I talk. So it's trying to find that right balance, and it just feels like even 2 days later, I'm still getting anxiety over things that have caused issues with my mouth. It's all slow. I have to take my time, and that's hard. That's the hardest thing about this.
And one of the questions come in from one of our medical team. I've seen oral cancer in teenagers. How does the group reach out and educate this largely unsuspecting group? So we're really talking about cancer at young age and early detection. So how do we help educate the young people? What would you recommend, and what support groups are you in that might help with this?
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons I started up the Young Tongues, because I did feel underrepresented, and also I felt really isolated. And I think, to draw back on your earlier question to Steph, with survivor's guilt, I felt incredibly guilty and actually in a way invalid, because if I look at my cancer story, I only had the surgery. I didn't have the other stuff. So I felt incredibly guilty to be moaning about how my arm hurts, or to be complaining that I'm struggling with fatigue, when actually, medically speaking, I shouldn't be struggling with fatigue. So I felt incredibly isolated, and can only imagine that for someone even younger than me. I was 31 at the time, so anyone in their 20s and teens, it is even harder. With the young tongues, what I've been really, really, really careful to do is that all our stuff that we put on Instagram is really colourful. It's positive with a smattering of reality, because we can't spin it all positive.
Can't sugarcoat it.
We can't sugarcoat it. But one of the things I had when I got diagnosed was, and they told me about the glossectomy, I was like, what does that look like? Like, what does it mean? And we all know going to Dr. Google is a really, really bad idea. I asked family and friends to have a look, and they said, you don't want to look. So I've been asking within the community to share photos which give a bit more of a perspective of reality of what to expect when things are fully healed, and the wide spectrum of how things can look like and feel like. So to try and cater for that. In terms of how do we educate and reach out, I think we would have to do a whole workshop on that, and please reach out. We're happy to share, and we're happy to do a whole workshop, but we need time and space to do that. I think it's a bigger question that can't be answered in one sentence.
Okay. Diz, I think coming on to you, what would you say is biggest fear since being diagnosed?
My biggest fear is choking. So I've choked in the last 14 months. I've choked about 10 times, and that's proper through this was, and I can't breathe, I can't do anything. And so there's Jess at home, that's not a problem, hitting the highness on me, and has done all of those 10 times. But the fear has been on my own when it happens, and not knowing what to do. And so I'm very blasé to my friends about it. Then I'll just knock on someone's door. I know I have X amount of time until the worst could happen. But at the same time, it's still a frightening thing. And anytime I have substances, I'm like, well, this is it. On my epitaph, and then it said, put one pepper in the picture. I'm like, that's so not flattering. And that's, so totem's the real big thing. And I wasn't warned about it when I had all of my surgeries. It's not until I did it and was like, oh, so this is a thing now. Awesome. So this that tips on bidding. So if I'd been informed of it, I don't know what I would have done. I've still had the surgery and everything, but I think I should have been a bit more prepared for that first time rather than that feeling that I have. But yeah, so Toten's my biggest fear at the moment.
Okay. And Steph, one of the things that came out in your presentation, obviously, was the love for your young son. And would you say that since this, you are more risk adverse, or do you go out now and live life to the full, or where are you now?
So I have actually decided to balls to the wall, just go. I started grad school last spring. So I'm at Ohio State University, master's program for healthcare innovation. I've always had a passion for trying to change healthcare, especially in the US. Things are pretty broken. I can't work at the bedside anymore because of the limitations in my shoulders and neck. It's too dangerous for me to try to move patients and whatnot. And I can't fit a respirator because of the swelling and everything, which in COVID times, obviously, I wouldn't be able to go in patient rooms. And a PAPR would dry me out since I don't have saliva as much as a normal person. So I'm now working as a nurse educator, educating new grads, teaching them evidence-based practice projects. I started volunteering at 3 different organizations. And then on top of, I have my son and dating and trying to have a social life amidst COVID and all the other craziness I have going on. But yeah, I'm just trying to get out there and live because, you don't know when you're going to be stuck in a hospital bed again or in quarantine from pandemic. So
that's fantastic. I just want to take this opportunity to thank the three of you for the comments that are coming up at the moment. The last one is inspirational three ladies, just wow. So it's absolutely fantastic. I just want to end on a final comment. Steph, your mug, you're kind of a big deal, all three of you. Absolutely bloody amazing. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So, David, I think back to you, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. And first of all, thanks, Ben, for chairing that session. Really good job. Really well done. And thanks all the ladies, Barbara, Steph, and Diz. Really important to hear the messages you had. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed by everything. I'm sure Chris will be saying exactly the same. It is remarkable, and I've learned an awful lot from this.